All right, so our last section for this unit is like, what do we use the constant of proportionality? How do I use it? And we've kind of been talking about that throughout. I just want to take a moment to like explicitly, formally go over that, so you can kind of see that in a different way. So we're going to say that I can use the constant of proportionality to find missing values. So how do I make a prediction, figure stuff out by using this? So just a reminder, a recap, we have this situation that James can walk a quarter of a wall, let's just say a quarter of a mile, in 1/2 of an hour. So our constant of proportionality is his unit rate, his miles per hour. Okay? So our constant of proportionality comes from y, the miles, 1/4, divided by x, 1/2. And that kind of looks like a lot, so I'm just going to do 1/4 divided by 1/2. Make it look a little nicer. So you're just finding his unit rate, which we call the constant of proportionality. So 1/4 divided by 1/2 is 1/2. So he can walk 1/2 of a mile per hour. So for our equation, y equals our constant times x. Our constant of proportionality is 1/2 mile per hour times x. And then we're going to label that. So in this case, it didn't tell me what x and y were, but I know by doing the unit rate that the first thing I divided was y. Okay, and 1/4 was the number of miles, so y represents the number of miles. Okay, and that comes from, make that a better arrow. Okay, and then that means that the other value is x. So that means that 1/2 is x, y divided by x, and 1/2 represents the number of hours. So the number of miles comes from my unit rate, 1/2 times x, which is the number of hours. Okay. And we'll label this as the unit rate. Go for it. So whatever y represents comes from the unit rate times whatever x represents. And we just find the constant of proportionality, we find our unit rate, and we just plug it in for k in the equation. It just replaces this guy. All right, so a couple examples. A car travels 300 miles after 4 hours. So our constant of proportionality is k, and we're going to find the miles per hour. So k comes from the number of miles, 300, divided by the number of hours, 4. Is 75. Miles per hour. Ooh. Squeeze that in there. Okay, and it doesn't tell me what X and Y are, but by finding the miles per hour, if I always have to do Y divided by X, that means 300 is Y and 4 is X. So then my equation is Y equals my constant of proportionality, 75 miles per hour, times X, I'll just label this, okay, which was my number of miles. So using my equation, how far will the car have gone after traveling for 6.5 hours? So I'm just going to write my equation. Y equals 75x times x. Okay. It tells me 6.5 hours, and x represents the number of hours. So instead of x, I just replace it with 6.5. So to get y, the number of miles, I'm just going to do 75 times 6.5. So we get that after 6.5 hours, the car travels 487.5 miles. Okay, and so then we can use the same equation for this next one. So if the car traveled 687.5 miles, how long was it traveling for? So our number of miles, y, comes from our constant of proportionality, our unit rate, times the number of hours, x. So in this case, we have 787.5 miles, which is what y represents. And then I'm just going to write the rest of my equation. So if we're looking for what x is, so in this direction we multiplied, so since to find y, so to find the opposite thing, x, we should do the opposite operation and divide by 75. I wrote 57, my bad. Okay, I think this is as good as it's gonna get. Whoop. This is why you use pencil and not pen. So to find the opposite thing, we should do the opposite operation. So I'm going to do 787.5 divided by 75 this time, and you get 10.5. And we were looking for length of time, so 10.5 hours, so 10.5 hours. Okay, last example. It cost $549 to rent a car for 12 days. So we're going to find the cost per day. So my constant of proportionality, K, comes from y divided by x. So if I'm finding the cost per day, I need to take the cost divided by the number of days. So my cost should go on top, 549, divided by the number of days, which was 12. So by doing this setup, I now know that y represents the cost and x represents the number of days. Oops. So 549 divided by 12 is $45.75. Because we're finding the cost per day. So $45.75 per day. Then to write our equation, y, the cost, comes from our constant of proportionality. My goodness. Times the number of days, x. Okay. So to find the missing values, if the car cost $288.75 to rent, how long was it rented for? I'm going to start by writing my equation. Y, the cost, comes from my constant of proportionality, times x, the number of days. So in this case, the number it gives us is a cost, so that's going to replace y. And I'm just going to leave everything else the same and rewrite it. Okay. So I have 45.75 times something I don't know. To get that thing by itself, I'm going to divide by my constant of proportionality. Did I type that right? Yep. Okay. So that doesn't turn out to be a nice number, but hey guys, that's really, really okay. Okay. So we get that the car was rented for 6.311 days. Let's round to the nearest whole number, right? They're not, we'll to make it nice. Okay, so we find the whole number, place the ones. We look next door. 5 or bigger, add 1 more. 3 is not 5 or bigger, it's 4 or less, so it gets to rest. So 6 stays the same, and everything else is going to turn to zeros. So they rented it for about 6 days. All right, last one. How much will it cost to rent the car for 10 days? So y equals my constant of proportionality times x. Y represents the cost, x represents the number of days. So in this case, I don't know what y is, but x is 10 days. So instead of x, that variable, I'm going to replace what it represents, 10 days. And everything else will stay the same. So y, my cost, comes from 45.75, the cost per day, times the number of days. And you get $457.50. I'm going to add a 0 on the end, even though it doesn't have one up here, because money has a 0 on the end. It has 2 decimal places. All right, so that's it. And I know that might be a little bit tricky. Okay, it's the same process that we've been doing before, just kind of assigning x and y to it.